Okay, this is paper 6C from the Key Assessment 2 for the upper 6th. And first question, lovely question on biodiversity. So obviously we need to read the question, that's always so important, what can I say? I've just marked a whole set of stuff and people are still not reading the question. So it tells you that species richness is one measure providing information on the number of species found in a particular area. So this is something that we haven't done, just measuring the number of species. We've done this, Simpson's Diversity Index, different, and it's calculated as below, where we've got the total number of all species, organisms in a species, and total number of organisms of a particular species. So we've got all species and all the numbers of individuals in one species. So, which measure provides better information regarding biodiversity? Explain. So we're going to use the word because somewhere in our answer. So, species richness is just the number of species. This tells you the organisms in a particular species as well as the number of species. So, Simpson's index is better because, if you use the word because, then you're definitely going to give an explanation afterwards. Well, I say definitely, perhaps not. Because it provides information about the number of individuals and the number of species. If I got more space, I would have gone on to say species richness only tells you the number of species, but I haven't got space, so I'm not going to. So, there are 288 known species of mammal on the island of Borneo. Explain how you could explain how you could obtain the data required to calculate the Simpson's Diversity Index. So remember, Simpson's Diversity Index, we know we've got 218 species and we need the individuals. So, one of the problems, as you know from watching the videos, is that mammals move around, and so I refer you back to the videos about mark, release, recapture. So, use the mark, release, recapture method. So very briefly, in your area, wherever you're sampling, you trap the animals and you mark them. So what you're saying is, right, we've got animals all over the show, and certainly if you were asked to calculate it, I'd do this kind of diagram to remind you what's going on. You then trap in an area and you mark the ones that you've caught, then you release them, and the idea is that they spread out through the population. And you then go back and recapture, and you're saying that the proportion of marked to unmarked in that is equivalent to the proportion of marked to unmarked in the original. Sorry about the squiggle, because you know that's how I would do it in an exam. So use the mark, release, recapture method. trap the mammals, mark them, release, recapture, and count, marked and unmarked. Calculate total population. Species. That's what you do. So, one problem. Suggest. So work out one problem associated with this method and explain how it could affect the validity of any conclusions. So, a couple of problems with this. Trapping the mammals could harm them or make them more vulnerable. So, another good explain word. So, the number caught in the second sample and the recapture would be lower so the calculation would be incorrect. I think this question more than any other, no, we don't always have time to deliver every single little aspect. I've done a number of videos on all the ecological techniques that you could possibly want to use. It includes sweep nets, which is one of the other papers. You need to watch those because they're the things that you're least familiar with, and we don't have time to do all of those when we're out at Old Cays. So, of the 288 species of mammals in Borneo, 102 are bats. What a lovely place that must be. I love a bat. The following diagram is a phylogenetic tree showing the evolutionary relationship between some of the bats. So here we've got mops, oh, what a great name, Pentithaulicacea, Sinopterus brachiotis and Sinopterus sphinx. I wonder what that one looks like. Anyway. Amino acid sequences, so we're doing some biochemical stuff of cytochrome oxidase. We don't know what that is, but we don't care, but what we do know is that that is an enzyme because it's got the A's on the end. From blood samples were prepared, the sequences for the other three bats were compared with the sequence, so we're looking at the relationship between those and Sinopterus brachiotis. The number of positions at which there was a different amino acids is recorded in the table. So these are differences and not similarities. So this one is least different. So that means it's the most similar. And this one is the most different. And then the least similar or closely related. Mark clearly with the letter X. So starting to think about phylogenetic trees, the position of an ancestor common to Pentithaulicacea, which is this one, and Sinopterus sphinx, but not to mops. So Sinopterus sphinx, follow it back, follow it back, follow it back, here, but not related to mops. Use the information in the table in the phylogenetic tree to identify the bats. So, we're comparing to which one? To this one. So the most similar is going to be the one with the most recent common ancestor, so that's going to be Sinopterus sphinx. So B is going to be Sinopterus sphinx. We just need to copy the spelling. T-R-U-S sphinx. I wonder if it tells riddles. Then the one that's least common, so the one with the most differences, is going to be mops mops. It's much further away, the common ancestor's way further back. So A is going to be mops mops. And that leaves us with C being Penthator lucasi. Sounds like a porn star. Dr. Savile sniggering in the background. Mops mops is a fruit-eating bat, while Sinopterus sphinx feeds on insects. So one eats fruit, fructivore, and one's an insectivore. The table shows the nutritional composition of the food of these species. So fruit's got loads of carbohydrate, hardly any fat, and a bit of protein. Insects have got very little carbohydrate, piles of fat and piles of protein. With reference to respiratory fat pathways, explain why we've got a lower mass of food eaten by Sinopterus sphinx. So that's our sphinx one, and this is our mops. So lower mass, but it's able to synthesize more ATP. So what do we know about fats and carbohydrates? That's what it's really asking here. So insects have a higher fat content and fat releases twice as much energy per gram than carbohydrates. So that's a bit of core for you there, isn't it? That was what we did in the core. What else do we know? We know that fats have a higher hydrogen content and therefore can produce more ATP and water. So that was our sort of metabolic water idea, and again that was stuff that we did in the core. If you did this in the real exam, we'd be expecting you to talk about the respiratory pathways that lead to that ATP production and water, but you've not done component 1 yet, so you can get away with just saying that it produces more. There will be more to say in the real thing.